Hello, everyone, and welcome. Hope you are joining us live here on Facebook. I am here to talk to Joran and Jennifer Oppelt about their new book, Visionary Leadership. So first and foremost, guys, welcome. Super good to sit down and talk with you about this. Talk to me a little bit about what made you want to write this book. What is it about? What inspired you? Give us some backstory here.
Well, I would say I did not want to write a book. Really, I think that this book was born out of a routine that Joran and I established during the, kind of the quarantine, where what's happening?
Sorry, I clicked open the video. Mute that.
All right, ma'am. So you were saying you didn't want to write this book, but what motivated you to do so?
Yeah, we were taking walks every night just to kind of make a habit of getting out of the house during the pandemic. And it became a really good practice. And we found it was a great way to kind of unpack our days and talk about what was going on and dive deeper into some of these topics that both of us are interested in. But the actual writing of the book really kind of took a bit of a nudge from Joran to get me involved personally. But the inspiration was definitely in the walks, I believe.
That's amazing. What kind of insights were you guys gleaning? What made you really decide that this needed to be written out and shared with people?
I'll let Joran answer that one.
I am so excited to be streaming on Facebook. We've got a couple people watching now. Jeff Nelson, who illustrated the book, who is our experience lead at Illustrious. He's watching online and commenting. And Lisa Seta, who is the owner of Office Assistance Plus and does space planning. She is watching online as well. So I wanted to just say hello to the both of them.
Hello.
Thank you for watching.
Ashley, what was the question?
So what type of really little nuggets of wisdom did you guys pull from these walks? And what made you decide that this was information that really needed to be shared out with the public?
Jen says some brilliant stuff when she'll get in the zone and she'll start working through something, and sometimes I'll ask some coaching style questions and poke and prod her a little bit, but most times it's just she's just riffing on ideas. And every time she'd hit on something, I'd be like, you got to write that down. Are you going to write that down, or do I need to write that down? You know what I mean? It was one of those, that was good. You got to write that down. So I think that between that and some blog posts we had already written and put on the site and some of the stuff we were in the process of writing, I think it just eventually became clear, hey, this all fits together. This is all one thing.
Talk to me then, Jen, a little bit about your leadership style. What drew you to these conclusions? How do you frame, really your thinking behind how you're making your leadership decisions?
Yeah, I think I've always just been an observer and very curious. I've, been in a variety of different jobs and positions and, owning my own company. I was given a leadership position as a store manager at, I think, 23. I was a store manager of a Pier 1 Imports. And, so I got early leadership experience and, learned how to, earn the respect of a team, many of them being much older than myself. And then from there, just things unfolded in many different opportunities. But, where I think I got the most interesting experiences when I owned my corporate wellness company, and I was, at the meeting tables with, high-level executives of Humana, people who were in leadership, in board positions at St. Petersburg College, people that, have very important jobs to do. And I was at the table with them and I got to see what leadership looks like and its best and its not so best lights, and, so many different opportunities from different perspectives of leadership, from very, very small business, solopreneurs to high-level executives. And I just observed and kind of took it in along the way. And when I got an opportunity, to lead in my own company, I knew what I wanted and didn't want. And for me, there's a big emphasis on listening, and I'm much more of a servant leader of sorts. I want to know how I can help.
Actually, so that led into my next question. What are some of the typical leadership styles you're seeing when you're in these boardrooms, when you're talking to clients? And I guess how much does that differ from what you would hope to see based on what, your own experiences are?
Yeah, I mean, there's many different leadership styles, but I think kind of there's a couple that we think of, and one is that top-down kind of leader that, likes to roll out a, directive, and this is how it's going to go, and this is what we're going to do. These are your orders. And some employees actually really thrive in that kind of situation. They just want to know what to do, and they want to do it right. But then there's the type of leader that really believes in collaboration and, wants to have interesting and new ideas. They want diversity in their decision making, and they know that they've got talent there for a reason to contribute to that. And not to be confused with like a democratic process where everybody gets like an equal say. I think that leaders do need to make decisions. They need to, provide stability. They need to provide structure. But there is kind of a defining difference between that top down and that collaborative leader. And I'm interested to hear Joran's thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, as far as styles of leadership, I think that I remember like the Faces of Innovation work by IDEO, and there's this idea that there are these archetypal ways to lead a group or an organization. There can be the people who like to build and like to construct things. There can be the people who like to investigate and learn things. There can be the people who like to direct and command things. And within those buckets, there's all these different kind of archetypal words for styles of communication and leadership. And I think the way people innovate is the way people lead. The way people are forging ahead is either that kind of command and control, or that communitarian consensus building approach, or the way of building something, whether it's toward a sense of legacy, or strategy, or whatever you're building. And then also that sense of learning, like everything's an experiment, right? Like, what are we learning from this sprint, or within this quarter, or by launching this product? So the way we innovate, I think, is the way we also lead.
Talk to me, because I with visionary leadership, then first off, give me a little bit of a summary about the book and some of the topics that you guys are really diving into. What does it look like for those that are looking to purchase?
Well, I can tell you that it's 88 pages, so it fits nicely in the palm of your hand, and it's 5x7. And I was talking to somebody who bought a copy last night, who got it in the mail. And just as a sidebar, Jen and I don't have copies of the book yet. Like, our author copies have not arrived. I've not yet seen the book. I've not yet touched it, but I've gotten amazing feedback on the matte, cover versus the glossy cover, and the illustrations, and everybody says it looks amazing. So what I can tell you about the book is that it's you can take it to the doctor's office, you can take it to the beach, you can take it anywhere you want a quick read. The chapters are designed to be easily digestible and easily absorbed in a way that the information that we've provided is really based not only in science and research, but also in our own experience. So there's real stories and real numbers and real tools and real techniques that you can use to change habits, or change your way of thinking of leadership. There's a couple sections that are kind of like red flags, what to watch out for, signs your leadership isn't working, or signs you might be a narcissistic leader. There's all kinds of stuff in there that, if you're nodding while reading this chapter, it's probably a bad sign, right? So yeah, Jen, what else is in there?
Yeah, I mean, those are the major things that I can think of. I think there's a bit of both. There's the, what to look out for, and then, how to improve, and giving you some ideas on how to grow as a leader. And, I think that it's sometimes it's hard to see yourself though. So especially the signs that your leadership isn't working, we tried as much as we could to come up with a list of things that would give you signs outside of you thinking that maybe there's something wrong with your leadership. You know what I mean? Like, 'cause I think a lot of people think they're doing a pretty good job, and they're kind of doing the best they can. And, but I think there are some signs in the background. But I would say, if you're ever really wondering if you're a good leader, ask people who work with you. And try to find ways to engage them in honest conversations where they feel comfortable opening up.
So talk
And
to
I
me,
would add too, I mean, I'm doing this Donald Miller Business Made Simple course right now. And that's another thing he suggests is just schedule time. It can be every month, it could be every quarter, whatever, but make time for some kind of feedback loop. And it doesn't have to be with the people who work for you. It can be with your peers. It can be with anybody, really, because in the age of social media, like, everybody's seeing how you act and how you behave, right? So there just can be some feedback loops and some check-ins with people, to say, where do you think I have room for improvement, maybe in my communication style, or in the way I approach people, or the way I ask for things, right? Like, just having a leader who is able to ask for and receive feedback is going to improve their leadership style and be a better leader faster than someone who doesn't, right? So making time and asking for that feedback is just huge.
what would you indicate maybe then as some major red flags that somebody should be paying attention to from their own leaders or in their own behavior if they are in fact leading a team?
I think one of the ones that I noted in the book was that if you're noticing that you have a team that's really excited and motivated about something, whether that's because they just started, or you just started a new project or a new initiative in your business, and everybody seems like super excited, and you're asking them like for feedback, and everybody's giving their ideas, and then you see that energy just kind of fade away. A lot of times it's because they don't feel like their ideas ever came to fruition. And so that to me is a big red flag, when you see high energy and then it just kind of fizzles. That's one that I've noted for sure.
Yep.
What about some green ones then? Like, what is something that somebody should pay attention to, or maybe hone in themselves?
I think it's probably basically, almost on the other end, that you've got like a sustained energy and buzz, and people are bringing ideas, and they're saying, hey, I thought of this thing last night. What do you think? Like, you want people excited and bringing their thoughts to the table, and not just kind of, getting through the day, doing the minimum, interacting as minimally as possible.
Now, what kind of mindset do you think really inhibits somebody from evolving into the leader that they become? What kind of old patterns do you think somebody could be fighting?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you go to the Carol Dweck work of mindset, which is the book she wrote, she talks about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And if you look at things under that fixed mindset criteria, you've got things like doesn't accept feedback or criticism, looks at obstacles as things that will defeat them, and gives up or runs out of steam, or looks at competition as something that gets angry or defensive about the competition, whereas somebody with that growth mindset looks at competition as something that is going to inspire them, right? Or better yet, even that somebody in the community to celebrate, somebody that's doing good work, and the rising tide lifts all boats, and that obstacles are there to elevate your practice and to encourage you on the path toward mastery. And there's just something with growth mindset that if you're applying yourself in that way, you just feel it. There's an engagement that happens with not only your team and I'd say the marketplace, but like the ecosystem you're in, the community you're in, I'll say, and also intrapersonally. There's some kind of alignment that's happening then intrapersonally that feels better. It feels easier, right? There's a sense of ease that you bring to your leadership and not contraction or tension or conflict. Yeah, I would say, and if you are feeling those things, check your triggers, notice where they are happening. Is it a certain time of day? Is it around certain people? And then work to change those triggers and those habits.
Yeah, I think a real good sign of that growth mindset is when you're seeing opportunity, even in the challenges. When people get into a more victim type speak, oh, these things always happen, no matter how hard I try, no matter what I do, they always, these kind of statements, I think, are signs of a fixed mindset that are really hold people back. And they don't realize it. Most of the time, people don't realize it. That's why I say, if you can learn to start asking, accepting feedback, people might be able to shine a light on things that you're not even seeing. But that victim mindset really kind of has to fall away once you get into a growth mindset, because you realize that you are the one who's actually in charge of how you react to challenges and obstacles. Do you grow through them and become better? Or do you let it just, hold you back and, feel sorry for yourself about it?
Now, somebody that's listening, that's like, I really want to take on this growth mindset. This sounds way less stressful than this other way that I'm thinking. Any are there like mantras or like really thoughts that you would want them to consider as they try to make that adjustment? Like, what do you think it takes to develop that type of mindset?
Yeah, actually, I put a little bit of thought into this. It's like you kind of have to first be aware of the problem, and that's really where it starts, is awareness. And then there's an intention about doing something different. And then there is an action in which you practice something that's a bit outside your comfort zone. So I've likened this to, if somebody has a fixed mindset, say, I can't cook, and that's just, they keep repeating that statement, I can't cook, and then suddenly they decide that they're ready, they're aware of that statement, and they're like, oh man, it would be really nice if I could cook. I would love to have some people over for dinner sometime, that would be wonderful. Well, you're not going to go from I can't cook to preparing for a dinner party. So, but you have to be aware first, of that issue and decide you want to do something about it. And then maybe just start small, like, well, let me try making myself, a nice little dinner. I'm going to make, some spaghetti or something that, that doesn't seem too hard. You do the research, you figure out the recipe, what you need, the materials and the supplies, and you put the meal together. And having that simple meal builds your confidence enough that you're like, okay, well, next time maybe I'll make a lasagna or something, and you get a little bit more outside that comfort zone before you got a couple of recipes that you can make, and you can have that dinner party. And that each time you build upon that confidence, you are growing your mindset.
And I will add on to that, I love the cooking analogy, because I always use analogies that are more negative. Like, I want to stop snacking, or I want to stop smoking, or I want to stop doing something, right? But Jen's like, you want to become a better cook, right? That's a more perfect analogy. So in that case, then the mantra would be, I am a creative in the kitchen, or I am someone who takes care of what I put into my body, or something like that, right? Like, there's something that is creative or artful or more gentle or more sustainable or more loving or just more patient or kind, or whatever, right? That is directly related to how you source, cook, prepare, and eat your meal, right? There's some kind of affirmation that needs to be said, like either in the mirror or when you get up in the morning, that changes the way you see yourself, right? You have to begin to see yourself as someone who, not a great chef, you're not Julia Child or Gordon Ramsay, like you're not going to get there right away, but you can at least be somebody who can experiment and have fun and innovate with recipes like Jen's describing. And that begins with seeing yourself a certain way. And, to get over that fulcrum or that trigger for change, like the pain has to be greater than the fear of becoming something new. Like the pain of the status quo and the shit you're putting in your body, or this horrible nutritional value of the snacks you're eating every day, or your sugar intake, the pain of that has to be greater than the fear of either experimenting with different options or becoming something new or something greater. But until that's tipped, no change can happen. Rarely will change happen.
I would say too, listening to you guys, I'm hearing a whole lot of elements regarding trust. It takes trust to allow yourself to step into that growth mindset and believe that you can cook the spaghetti. It takes trust to believe that you're going to be able to let go of the reins of your team a little bit and that they can perform. So can you talk to me a little bit about, that experience for people as they kind of ease into that trust pool?
Yeah, that's a hard one for a lot of leaders. I've heard the term "cutting the vine" is one that they talk about in the book Traction. That's really how to lead a team where you're not trying to do everything, and that's super hard for people. And I think that there is a leap of faith that you have to make in people, but I think it also really comes down to communicating really clearly and onboarding them to the vision and showing them, and providing for them some stability and processes that they can have some confidence around. Joran and I like to bring up a section from Dare to Lead and Brene Brown about paint done, and that's where you really create a picture about what good looks like, and like people want to perform, they want to perform well, and they want to perform autonomously, but that doesn't just happen by, usually, sometimes it can, sometimes you can be like, what, it's your department, go, and that's something that is a little bit more rare, but it can happen. But I think in most day-to-day work situations, it really is about creating just enough guardrails for people so that they know what good looks like, and then letting them go.
And not just good, but complete.
Yeah.
Right. Like
let them go,
good
and
is
then
good is subjective,
right?
But once get it done, then we can look at it and objectively say it's good or bad or in the middle or whatever. But at least get it complete, right? Just like get to done.
Yeah.
And that's hard for people who don't have as many details. The example Brene uses is some kind of report that she was pulling together, and one of her directors, kept asking a bunch of questions, and they kept getting it wrong. And finally he stopped her in the hallway or something and was like, I need you to just like paint a picture of what this looks like. Is it an Excel spreadsheet? Is it cells? Is it color coded? Do you want it 3-hole punched in a binder with tabs? Like, I just don't, are clients going to see this, or is it internal? I don't have any of this information for this report you want. And then that moment she was like, oh, I need to paint done for you. I need to paint a picture of what this looks like, because that's what gives you the amount of information you need. And it's just a practice now that they do. And she wrote about it in the book, and it's we've brought it to clients, and it's a game changer. It is. Just being that laser clear with your instruction and your expectations it can change everything.
And what I got from that lesson is it's not even always so much that you've communicated all the details. It's like you are actually figuring out the details and even more about what you need by explaining it. Once you take the time to really paint done, you're like, oh, wait, actually, this is better. Let's do it this way. You know what I mean? And you're kind of working it out through your head while you're creating what done looks like for them.
And again, speaks to the power of visual thinking, because we process visuals 22,000 times faster than words. So as soon as I start describing a tree to you, well, you're going to have questions. Is it an apple tree or is it a pine tree? Well, no, it's an apple tree, silly. Oh, okay. Well, are they red apples or are they green apples, right? Like, you open the dialogue once you paint a picture, because visual information allows you to interface in that way. And that's what Painting Done does for you, is it increases the speed and accuracy of the communication.
Mm-hmm.
I will certainly say too, as being an employee before, that it is incredibly helpful when I have a manager that's like, we need this project for this, and I need it to be presentable for this or to be used for this, and allowing me to figure out the how and the what and every other detail, and hand them a nice project that we can then evaluate. But it gives you such a level of power and control over your own projects, and feeling like you can serve in your own zone of genius without having to worry about the nitpicky details until you get there.
Yeah. You mentioned trust too, and I feel like there's a tool, a mantra that I use that was written by Eric Maisel in Coaching the Artist Within, and it's something I use before I get on any workshop or client session, or just anytime I'm feeling kind of jacked with adrenaline or butterflies, any kind of, if I'm feeling off kilter, I just stop. And he's all about stopping in the moment. And so the affirmation, or the mantra, is, I am completely stopping. I expect nothing. I trust my resources. I embrace this moment, and I return with strength. So I breathe through that, right? And then I'm back, and then I'm grounded, right? My feet are on the ground, my shoulders are up, I'm ready to go.
Phil, loved that.
Yeah.
So I know you guys are very selective with your words. Like we've talked about words before, like down to like the exact reason you use a specific phrase. So talk to me about why you chose visionary leadership. Like, what about the word visionary especially is so important? And I see you smiling, Joran, because I'm sure there was a reason behind this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real reason is we were starting to build assets around visionary leadership, because Illustrious was contracted to provide some internal executive coaching for a client. And we started to build around the concept of visionary leadership. And at first I wasn't a big fan of the name. I was like, that sounds hokey. That sounds cheesy. Visionary, like, what does that even mean? Well, the more we started to build components underneath it, the more I was like, yeah, this is different. My friend Ed Oakley wrote a book called Enlightened Leadership. There's integral leadership, or holistically, there's like, however you language it, there's a way to lead that is more integrative and harmonious and sustainable and present. Yeah, I mean, Jen, what's your take on that, on the name?
I mean, to me, the visionary is one with vision, right? But you can have vision all day, but unless you're a leader with your vision, you're either not going to get too far, or you're going to have a lot of bumps along the road. So I think taking that, the vision for what a business can be and what it should be and what people need and what's helpful and useful, and getting really excited about your great idea that you want to bring to market into the world, is great, but you've got to do it from the aspect of a leader if it's going to be successful.
And we opened it up to conversation too in this series of calls we did on the subject, and people had some real interesting opinions about the words visionary leadership, and that is exactly what the first chapter of the book is people describing this association with the word visionary, like what comes to mind for them. And there was this really interesting thread of spatial or positioning. Like, some people said, oh, well, a visionary leader is someone who leads from above because they can see further, or or higher, like to Jen's point about casting and holding that vision for the team, right? And then some people said, well, the best leaders lead from the bottom, right? They know that the best results come from, the outcomes come from their team, and so they need to be able to like lead from the bottom of the pyramid. And then some people said, well, no, a visionary leader is someone more like a coach who's going to stand side by side. And then somebody was like, oh, but what about the wolf pack, and the it's not the alpha wolf. They don't like to use the word alpha anymore. And I'm spacing out on the word, but the pack leader walks from behind so that they can see, right, what's coming in and who's in what's position. So there's this interesting concept of being kind of all of those things at once, this multi-dimensional leader who can lead from any of those positions. And then it's the switching between those modes and tasks, because when you're leading from any of those positions, then that's a different style of leadership, right? That requires different tools and different communication. So it's really the leadership switching and the speed and efficiency that someone can switch between modes that I think defines that visionary leader.
So when we're talking about trust, first off, and a huge part of that, in most businesses is your team. How do leaders surround themselves with the right team for them? Like, how can somebody determine that they have the right pieces in place? Do you have any tips or suggestions?
I mean, a no-brainer for me is to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you are at things that, are not in your zone of genius. So that's the component to a balanced team, is that you've got people who complement each other. And that's the biggie, in my opinion. And then, yeah, you all kind of have a shared appreciation, at least for a set of values. It's not that everybody's values individually need to be identical, but that there's a sense of shared values that the team all agrees upon. They could be the company values, it could be a leadership style, type of value, but it's really, you've got to have that respect and shared purpose, and understand that not everybody's going to be good at everything, and that's why we work well together. And with that comes some tension too, and that's one thing that I've noted. So, I tend to be more of a detail organized integrator type person, and I've worked with some very not detail oriented CEOs in the past. And there's a little bit of tension sometimes, because I will be pulling and saying, hey, we got to slow down, we got to think this through, and they'll be like, no, we got to go. And so you got to learn to live in that tension a little bit, and and just acknowledge it and let that be what it is, because they're there to keep the ship running, at a good speed. So we get where we need to go. And I'm there to make sure that the details get taken care of. So we got to balance that tension too.
I'd also like to believe, as you're talking about, that there's something to be said that you don't have to be good at everything. And it's okay to just accept that there are things you aren't good at, and then to surround yourself with that team. But what do you tell those people that, maybe you're just stuck, that they need to know it all, that they're too small to hire? How do you get them into more of that growth mindset, that this is a good thing for them?
Joran, I know you've dealt with that a lot, coaching leaders.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that comes to mind is the primary takeaway from the book Mastery by George Leonard. It's a small book. I think it's also a little 5x7, cute little beach book. But it's amazing, and George Leonard is amazing. The big, huge takeaway from the book Mastery is love the plateaus. There are so many people who are going to crash and burn and crash and burn. They're going to dabble, they're going to experiment, they're going to get in and find a sweet spot and then just stay there and get stuck. Real mastery looks like a spike, and then what could be a week or what could be 5 years of flat, and then another spike, and another what could be a month or could be 3 years of flat. And his main point is you've got to fall in love with the plateau. You've got to be okay just riding the rhythm, being okay with the rhythm and the sequence of mastery, and being okay doing nothing for a while. And I think that that's where leaders can do the most work, is figuring out, how to just, in those stretches of time, continue to work on some personal or professional development. And, again, like Jen said, get those really great integrators around you. And like you said, to your point, Ashley, you can't do it all, right? To be patient and to love yourself and to forgive yourself and to be checking in with yourself and taking that internal inventory all the time and doing some of that hard inner work. The very end of the book, we read it, and I think it was Jeff who was like, there's really two messages in this book. Like, there is the go, 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 and you can do it and reach for the stars, and it's your job to hold the torch and cast the big vision. And then there is, but don't fuck up, because this is what could happen, right? So there's this mixed message in the book that we really felt we needed to like synthesize and bring around and say, okay, you might have heard two things here, like, and you might be wondering, do I need to be the bold firebrand visionary person, or do I need to be the one who is worried about, thinking about strategy and focused on the day-to-day? And the answer is both. The answer is both, but you've got to understand, like, the growth happens during rest. Growth doesn't happen while you're pole vaulting, right? Growth happens while you're sleeping at night. So to be okay with the plateaus, to fall in love with the plateaus, find something to, what's the word, occupy yourself during the plateaus, so that you can get to the next the next fulcrum in your path toward mastery. That's what I would say.
I think a great thing to do in those plateaus, if you do already have a team, is to get like wildly curious about your team and what they're really passionate about, and how else you might, challenge them to start leading. So really, getting very into what the team needs to do and raising their own leadership. What ideas they can bring to the table, not to like mix things up and start like, another spike, to Joran's point, but just to like start to mentor and, develop them as leaders, I think is really important.
What are some of the tangible benefits that a company or a leader would see if they did take this step to invest in their team and invest some of their ideas and their trust into that team? What happens when you put that much into it?
The sky's the limit, really. I mean, you do have to be mindful. Like if you start every idea that every team member, brings, there can be a lot of chaos. There'll be systems that are started that, never get finished. There'll be platforms that you buy that never get fully utilized, so you do have to rein it in a bit. But I think that the gold really comes from, diverse ideas, and that's where your team really comes into play.
Yeah, having a strategy for collaboration, I think, is key. What does that look like? Is it a suggestion box, or is it, that has cobwebs on it? Or is it like the Toyota method, where you're finding a way to somehow incorporate every suggestion somehow, because it's a micro adjustment, it's a micro innovation to the process, right? Finding a way to enable collaboration in the team, especially now in like the hybrid workplace, where people are working remotely and using tools like Miro or Mural. I'm a big fan of Mural. I do a lot of work in Mural. Building virtual workspaces. Our friend Ben DeHant, who now works from Mural, just recently designed this virtual space where it's like a conference room with lockers and a cork board, and you can actually kind of hang out in there and put announcements on the bulletin board, and put pictures of your loved ones on your locker, and do activities there when you're, or if you need to brainstorm. So finding ways to just enable collaboration among the team that are fun and creative and engage people. People just feel like, they don't leave because of the job. They feel like they leave organizations because they feel like they're a different person, like they're growing at it's the same with relationships, right? It's just, if I feel like I'm on a different growth path and we're not growing together, well, you know what, the grass is going to be greener, But if we're constantly engaging and constantly collaborating and constantly communicating, and we're growing together toward something, toward that shared vision, right? And living and acting out those shared values that Jen was describing, it's going to last longer. People are going to be happier. People are going to be more productive, all of it.
And I would say too, I as somebody who has worked for plenty of people before, I love leaders who do practice what they preach. And we talk so often about the need for a work-life balance. And I know that's something you see a lot of struggle with, especially in, the US. Talk to me about the value then of a leader that really prioritizes this and what this would mean for the business and the team.
Yeah, I've, seen it in many different ways throughout my years. And I have to say that it does matter. And the leader has to model. And that's just one thing that I would really impress upon leaders is to just pause, before you start to try to engage conversation with your employees, at night, on the weekends. Show them that you take time, to go, do fun things on the weekend. Show them that, that you too need to take some time off to deal with family matters from time to time, I think it does start with modeling and sending the right message. It makes a big difference. If people feel like they're always on, then they're going to burn out and it's only going to last so long. And it's hard because, there is no work-life balance. This is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm experiencing. There is no work-life balance once, you bring work at home. I mean, it's just, this is how it is. Work and life go hand in hand, but that does not mean that you don't take breaks from work. It just means that we realize that this is our life and that we need to, be sure that we put the time aside to take care of those different things that we need to take care of, but with plenty of room for pause and rest. Otherwise, the brain does not replenish. I was reading a really, really interesting article and then series of different articles around the 4-day work week. That's not something that we specifically do where I'm working currently at Big C, but we do have what we call Focus Friday, in which they don't schedule meetings and we try to communicate very, very minimally. The idea is to let people focus. And then we also have a flexible work schedule. So, if you need to take some time off during the week and however it needs to work out, then that's what we do. So the thing with the 4-hour work week that I was reading is that the only way that works is that if we have deep focus, and then the only way you can have deep focus is when you have deep rest. So those things, that's just brain chemistry. That's how it works. So I think you really can be much more productive and get a lot more done in a short period of time and possibly have a 3-day weekend. It's possible. But what you can't do is work 7 days a week at full speed. It's not possible.
And because you really did touch on it, this is 2020 changed everything. Like it changed everything. And we are really in, this hybrid work world that you talked about. I've been working from home for years now. I loved the office, but, talk to me about some of both the benefits and some of the struggles that leaders are seeing as they're trying to balance, teams that are no longer in an office setting.
It's a big one. Some companies are handling it better than others. But there is especially for companies that have had a really positive in office, work environment, work culture, people who considered their coworkers friends and enjoyed, good times in the workplace. There's probably going to need to be some grieving, for the loss of what once was. Not to say that there won't be people going back to the office, but I can't imagine that most office-based workers will ever return to something that as it was before. It's going to be some other version. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. And I think the quicker that we do go through those cycles and, address, any sadness that we might have for what was, and embrace what's next, the sooner that we'll be able to address those challenges. But if we're stuck again in that fixed mindset of what was, then it's going to be more challenging.
I have a friend who teaches in Tampa, and she said she just attended like a training for teachers, kind of going back into the school system, and they had them gather in a huge building, like on the fairgrounds, and sit in these uncomfortable metal chairs, 300 people crammed into this space. This was like last week, and one presenter and small screen at one end of the hall, and they're all like struggling to hear, and they're all sitting there thinking, why are we doing this in person? Like we've got the tools now to do this, and like make sure that people hear every word, and can save the PDF and be following along like from their couch. So yeah, going back to the old ways of doing things, there are people who are like, hey, I know how to do it this way, or this is the way we've always done it, right? There's going to be, again, with the pain and the fear, like once you've got to be willing to experiment on the new, but the pain of the status quo has to grow. So as soon as they get 300 emails complaining about, you made me sit there in a hot horse barn on a metal chair, like all of a sudden the pain is going to be greater than the fear. So I got a comment from Denise is watching on Facebook. Denise Schultz is watching, and she said a great read is Sink, Float, or Swim. Jen, I'm wondering if you've heard of this. It puts emphasis on exactly this: taking care of yourself, rest, work-life balance, exercise, and eating healthy. All drivers to have you perform at your optimal performance level in all areas of life. Sink, float, or swim, she said.
Yeah, for sure. Another one on a similar topic is high performance something by Brandon Burchard. And it's
high performance
habits. Yep. And exercise. I exercise every morning and every evening to balance the, sedentary in front of Zoom most of the day lifestyle. And yes, those things matter a lot.
And, I would say too, certainly when you talk about the work-life balance, it really is to avoid that burnout. It's so you can continue this, but that's not just important for the employee, that's important for the company. When you're talking about the cost of, adding new employees and training them, and the loss of, all of that knowledge that they had gained over the years. It feels like it's something that's often ignored, or it's just kind of in hype, but there are real financial benefits to treating your employees like human beings.
Absolutely.
So it's
yes.
Yeah, they say it takes 6 months to onboard any new team member. I mean, that'll eat into your margins, right? That'll eat into your return. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's got to be considered as you're experimenting with stuff, or not inviting collaboration, or not casting a vision, or not painting done. You've got to take that into account.
Yeah. So if somebody's hearing this right now and they're like, oh, I don't like this. This has resonated a bit too much, and I realize that like we're not doing what we should. What do you tell them? Like if they're at this point of like, what do I do?
I mean, so far as like, if they're ready for a change, right? And that's really the only thing that I can really speak to, is if you're ready for a change, but you're just wondering how you can do it without being too overwhelmed. I would say one of two things. I would either say baby steps, like just do some small experiments, take it a bit at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself. You don't have to change it all overnight. Or another method might be to actually like take a hard stop, like take a sabbatical, like just like really just reset and rethink, and like kind of clean the slate and start new, like whichever style feels better for you.
And all right, awesome. Well, I know we're getting a little close to the end of the session here, but I really wanted to touch on this too. If someone pulls any lesson from this book that you guys have so beautifully put together, what would you hope that they would know?
let Joran go first on that one.
Okay, I can tell you what I know. I know what my answer is, and it is I think it's the second to last chapter that it's the one that Jen wrote, and it is the 3 things that every leader must do. Every visionary leader must know. The first step is to take ownership of the problem. I'm not going to tell you what the next 2 steps are because you got to buy the book to find out. But that first step, take ownership of the problem, is a huge one. And if you can cross that threshold, if you can walk across that Rubicon and say, like, you know what, this is mine. I own it. I created it. It's mine to destroy. It's mine to harvest. It's mine to grow, to plow, it's my domain. If you can take ownership of that problem, the rest is easy.
Yeah, and I would say in that similar, thought is that there's no shame in admitting that you have room to improve. And so if you can take that ownership but not feel bad, just get over any sense of guilt or shame as quick as possible, right? And step forward into action. That's really where it starts to happen.
Beautiful, guys. Is there anything else you want to add or talk about that we haven't touched on yet?
I can't think of anything. You know what I am going to do is I'm going to paste the URL to buy the book.
Perfect.
In the chat thread on the video.
Guys, Visionary Leadership, $15 on Amazon. Support a local business. I can certainly vouch that these are phenomenal people that you want to hear their thoughts about this on. Read the book. It's fantastic. I hope that everybody buys this and gets a new perspective on how they can be a great leader.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. Thanks for hosting the conversation today. We appreciate it.
Guys, it was such a pleasure. Thanks for talking with me. Everyone, I hope you buy it. $15 on Amazon, and we look forward to talking with you and seeing you soon.
Links in the comments. Bye, everybody.
Bye.